Hey guys, in this episode of Crypto Whiteboard Tuesday, we're going to explain what exactly Bitcoin is. We'll keep it simple, so stick around. First, let's start with the basics. What is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is a digital or cryptocurrency that was launched in 2009 by an unknown person or group under the alias Satoshi Nakamoto. Bitcoins are created through a process called mining, which we will cover in another video. But basically, it's a way to incentivize people to use their computing power to verify and add transactions to the blockchain, which we'll also cover in another video. So if it's not physical, how do we have any Bitcoins? Well, just like dollars, euros, or yen, Bitcoins only exist electronically. You can't hold them in your hand, but you can hold them in your wallet. Your Bitcoin wallet is simply an app that stores the public and private keys that allow you to interact with the network and other people on the network. You can send Bitcoins from one wallet to another by broadcasting a transaction to the network. The recipient of the Bitcoin then broadcasts the transaction to their wallet and voila, it's that easy. But wait a second, if the only way to pay someone is by giving them an electronic record of the payment, wouldn't it be easy to just double spend the coins and make two payments with the same coins? Well, yes, it would be easy if we didn't have some fancy cryptography and game theory to make it really hard to do that. To understand how this works, you need to understand a couple of concepts. First, every Bitcoin address has a public key associated with it, just kind of like a username, and a private key associated with it, which is kind of like a password. Second, you need to understand that these keys are actually more like a pair of keys that unlock a cryptographic box. If you give the box to someone else, they can't open it without the key. But once you open it, anyone can see what's inside. Third, you need to understand that all Bitcoin transactions are broadcast to the entire network for everyone to see. So now, let's go back to our example. Let's say Alice wants to pay Bob 1 Bitcoin. She writes out a transaction and signs it with her private key. This is like her putting her signature on a check. The transaction gets broadcast to the network. Now, because all transactions are public, let's assume that Eve is a malicious actor who intercepts the transaction before Bob receives it. Eve could then take that transaction and change the amount to 2 Bitcoins and broadcast that new transaction to the network. The original transaction, the one that Alice signed, still exists on the network, and Eve doesn't have Alice's private key. So she can't change the original transaction without that key. Also, all the miners on the network have already validated and added the original transaction to the blockchain. So Eve can't change it there either. So the only option left for Eve is to create a new blockchain with her modified transaction. But the problem is that the miners on the network whoa and accept her new blockchain because it conflicts with the old one that everyone has agreed upon. And if Eve tries to force the miners to accept her new blockchain by attacking them and trying to change the consensus, she'll have to spend far more electricity than the entire network, which is currently around 140 terawatts per year. For comparison, the entire United States only uses around 30 terawatts per year. So even if Eve somehow manages to modify the transaction, Alice can always appeal to the majority of the network, who have the original valid transaction, and they can all agree to ignore Eve's modified transaction. Bitcoin is also deflationary, meaning that the supply of Bitcoin is capped at 21 million, and the supply will get smaller over time because of a process called halving. Every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin given to miners for validating transactions gets cut in half. Now, what about Bitcoin forks? A fork is basically when people who disagree on how the protocol should evolve split the network into different paths. This is similar to how the Ethereum network split into Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. When this happens, everyone on the network has to choose which path they want to follow. Most people will follow the path of the main chain, which has the most economic activity, but early adopters of the forked coin will receive an equal amount of the new cryptocurrency on the new chain. Alright guys, I hope you've learned something today. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe for more content. See you next time.